Hi, I'm Tara Harvey of True North Intercultural. In this video, I want to talk to you about intercultural learning and share the top 5 reasons why I think educators, no matter what your role, should care about and get involved in intercultural learning. Whether you're an administrator or faculty, understanding what intercultural learning entails, developing your own intercultural competence, and knowing how to help your students learn and grow in this area can not only benefit your students, but also make your job more rewarding. Before we go any further, let's define intercultural learning. When I use this term, what I'm referring to is learning that involves developing one's intercultural competence. Intercultural competence can be defined as the ability to communicate and act appropriately and effectively with people from different cultural backgrounds. When I say effective, I mean you achieve what you set out to achieve. And by appropriate, I mean you do so in a way that's acceptable to any other parties involved. And across cultural differences does not just mean with people from other countries or nationalities. Intercultural competence can be extremely helpful when we're interacting with anyone from a different background or even different perspective. They might be from a different country, nationality, or ethnicity, or they could be the student across the room who comes from a completely different part of the country or different socioeconomic background, or who was raised in a deaf household, or maybe they grew up practicing a different religion from us. Cultural differences are all around us. In fact, some of the times when my intercultural skills are most put to the test is when I'm discussing politics with members of my own family. I'll go into more depth about what intercultural learning entails in a future video, but for now, I just want to emphasize this. It's developing one's ability to communicate and act appropriately and effectively across cultural differences, and this goes way beyond simply learning about other cultures. So let's talk about the top 5 reasons for educators to care about intercultural learning. Because you might be thinking, yes, I know intercultural learning is important and it's something my institution is working on, but it's not necessarily my concern because I teach biology or economics, or because my job is to advise students in choosing their courses, or maybe I work in residence life, or whatever. But as I said earlier, no matter what your role in education, we can all benefit from understanding what intercultural learning entails, developing our own intercultural competence, and knowing how to help our students learn and grow in this area. Reason number 1, developing intercultural competence involves critical 21st century skills. We live in an increasingly diverse, globalizing world. People are more mobile than ever before, and technology allows us to connect more easily with people in different places. This increased accessibility and changing times mean we have more students from a wide variety of backgrounds, with differing abilities, more sexual orientations and gender identities, more students with bicultural or multicultural identities, etc. So intercultural skills are widely applicable. By developing their intercultural competence, students will be able to engage more appropriately and effectively in any environment where they are interacting with people who are different from them. Such skills will help in personal and professional realms. Now, the term 21st century skills typically refers to content knowledge, literacies, and proficiencies that prepare individuals to meet the challenges and opportunities of today's world. While there are different frameworks of 21st century skills that differ slightly, they typically all include these 4 basic areas of development: collaboration and teamwork, creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, and communication. These are often referred to as the 4 C's. While some lists also identify global and cultural awareness or similar as part of a second tier of important 21st century skills, I strongly believe that developing one's intercultural competence actually helps with the 4 C's mentioned earlier. As I mentioned previously, our world is increasingly diverse, so collaboration and teamwork will require us to be able to engage appropriately and effectively across cultural differences. Also, developing intercultural competence requires an ability to frame shift, to see things from multiple perspectives, and this helps develop creativity. The ultimate goal of developing one's intercultural competence is to be able to bridge across differences, which requires critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And lastly, developing interculturally involves learning how to communicate more appropriately and effectively with people from different backgrounds, and so it obviously intertwined with communication skills. In a future video, I'll talk more specifically about what intercultural learning entails, but for now I just want to highlight that this is not simply disciplinary specific knowledge. And as I said earlier, it's not just about knowing about different cultures. It's a skill with a much broader scope that's not just relevant, but necessary in most, if not all, disciplines and professions in the 21st century and beyond. The second reason for educators to care about and get involved with intercultural learning is because we now know that exposure to and even immersion in other cultures is an insufficient condition for intercultural development. A growing number of colleges and universities refer to intercultural understanding, global competence, or similar in their mission statements, which is great. However, the way most schools seek to meet this objective is typically through a focus on increasing numbers, either numbers of students going abroad, numbers of international students, or increasing their domestic diversity of the student body. This approach relies on a faulty assumption, however. The assumption that exposure to people from different cultural backgrounds or immersion in another culture leads to intercultural development. The problem is that we now have significant proof that this is not necessarily the case, and yet we still often rely on this faulty assumption. Although intergroup contact theory has found that contact with people from different backgrounds can help reduce self-reported prejudice, this is typically the case only in situations which promote positive affect and reduce negative affect. This means that contact will likely lead to the reduction of prejudice only if learners have the tools to deal with any emotions the contact may induce. Furthermore, generalizing this reduction of prejudice to a wider outgroup is not automatic. And even in the best case scenarios, if contact leads to the reduction of prejudice, this does not necessarily equal intercultural development. In other words, assuming that just being in proximity to people from different cultural backgrounds will lead to intercultural development is a bit naive. In addition, we need to recognize that just because individuals are in the vicinity of people from different backgrounds doesn't necessarily mean they will interact in meaningful and authentic ways. In the study abroad field, a large-scale research project known as the Georgetown Consortium study found that a semester abroad did not lead to a significant intercultural development for most students. Furthermore, the study found that greater immersion did not necessarily lead to greater intercultural development. What the study found is actually that the middle-of-the-line immersion elements are what produce the most intercultural learning. For example, living with international students from multiple countries resulted in greater intercultural development than living with host families or with other students from the learner's home country. Another example, enrolling in classes with students from around the world was more impactful on students' intercultural learning than either direct enrolling at a host institution or enrolling in courses comprised entirely of students from the same country. Why? Because the challenge presented by the most immersive elements was likely too much for most students, if not balanced with the support of facilitated learning. On the other hand, the least immersive elements were not challenging enough. The researchers of the Georgetown Consortium study conclude, in short, many of these students, when left to their own devices, failed to learn well even when immersed in another culture. Being exposed to cultures different from their home cultures turned out to be a necessary, though not a sufficient, condition for their intercultural learning. Experiential learning theory also says that experience alone won't necessarily lead to deep learning. As David Kolb says, learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. Kolb's experiential learning cycle offers a framework for how to transform experience into learning. In order to learn deeply, we not only need to have an experience, but also need to reflect on that experience, make meaning of it, and then put our new learning to use, thus creating a new experience and continuing around the cycle again. I'll talk about this more in the next video, but I just wanted to point out another theory that supports this idea that exposure to or immersion in other cultures is not sufficient. The third reason for educators to get involved and care about intercultural learning is to improve campus climate. And I'm using the word campus loosely in the broadest sense of the term. Focusing on developing intercultural competence among our students, but also our own, can drastically improve the quality of interactions and engagement in our classrooms, on our campuses, within the wider community, and, in the case of cross-cultural exchange, abroad as well. Because intercultural learning involves developing skills that help us interact more appropriately and effectively with people who are different from us. These skills can benefit us and our students in all walks of life, in and beyond college. From living in the residence halls, to playing sports, to participating in departmental committees, to working as a manager in an engineering firm. Reason number 4 to get involved with intercultural learning is to improve your effectiveness and satisfaction as an educator. I know for a lot of people it seems like this is one more thing you have to think about as an educator, the sense that it's an additional burden. But I think you'll find your effort well worth it as you witness your students and yourself learning and growing in new and profound ways. Most educators I know want to have a positive impact on their students' lives, and helping students develop their intercultural competence can be very transformative and impactful. This success and visible impact on others oftentimes helps renew our own energy as educators. I know it does for me. In addition, focusing on your own intercultural learning will help you shift perspective to better understand where your students are coming from and respond in ways that will resonate with the students. As a result, you'll likely find yourself better able to connect with students and accomplish your own goals. And last but certainly not least, at the risk of sounding totally cliche, reason number 5 to get involved with intercultural learning is to be the change you wish to see in the world, as the great Mahatma Gandhi once said. As I said at the beginning of this video, the world is increasingly diverse and globalizing. And yet, at the same time, we're experiencing a great deal of polarization right now. We're surrounded by polarizing rhetoric, us versus them language. Practicing intercultural competence and teaching others to do so is a means to counteract that type of polarization. If you're an educator who wants to promote peace and diplomacy in the world, Developing a better understanding of what intercultural learning entails and working on your own intercultural development can help you model the way for your students, colleagues, community, and even family. So, to summarize, the top 5 reasons to care about and get involved with intercultural learning are 1. To help develop critical 21st century skills. 2. Because exposure to and immersion in other cultures is not enough. 3. To improve campus, and I'd say community climate. 4. To improve your effectiveness, satisfaction, and even happiness as an educator. And 5. To model the way, to be the change you wish to see in the world. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a great quote from an educator named Cyan Corwin, who participated in my online program, Foundations of Intercultural Learning and Teaching. I think her statement beautifully captures many of the ideas I've discussed in this video. Cyan says, "Our community and environment shine brighter when we learn to celebrate others, celebrate ourselves, and bridge the space between. By learning how to identify and navigate the differences and needs around us, we help those we interface with feel recognized, safe, heard, and seen, which makes for a far more fruitful learning environment. It's incredibly important to understand that our way of being is not the only way of being. When we learn how to get out of our own way, we become more adept at helping others do the same." I just want to let you know I will have another video coming out soon that goes into more detail about what intercultural learning entails, so please watch your email for that. And here are the references mentioned in this video in case you're interested in investigating further. Thanks so much for listening. Now please post a comment or any questions that you have in the comments section, and I'll do my best to respond there or to address them in a future video. Bye for now.